that we want more of? Money. Money and time. We want more clients, right? We want more clients, we want more money. And money comes in two forms, right? One is what we call the top line, which is revenue, right? The bottom line, which is profit, right? So there are the three things we really want. Number of clients, sales, and profits. But guess what? You can't improve them directly, right? Because these are results. These are not immediate factors you can do anything to improve. What we say in action is that there are 5 ways, there's only 5 ways you can do to improve your business. They are number of leads, conversion rate, number of transactions, average dollar sales, and your margin. These 5 ways you can actually do something to see the result, right? And of course, today we only have another 40 minutes. So we're not going to be able to go through all the 5 ways and all the strategies that we can use to improve your bottom line. At the end of the day, the bottom line is what you want, right? But we are going to focus on one area, and that is the conversion rate. Because that's the lowest hanging fruit, and that doesn't cost you anything more. You already have the leads in your office or in your store. It is for you to close, right? So how do you close them when they already come to you? So we're going to focus on that, and we're not going to be able to do all the ways that we can implement to increase our conversion rate. We're only going to focus on one effective way to increase your current conversion rate, and that's called question-based selling. There is a book having the same name, Question-Based Selling by Thomas Friis. Who have read that book before? If you haven't, oh great, we have one person. If you haven't, you might want to check out that book. That's a pretty good book, talks about question-based selling. And I'm going to go through the entire framework and tell you how you can do things a little differently in your sales process. Sounds good? All right. So, who thinks that you're a salesperson? We actually have a few, right?
Everybody, that's right.
Everybody, but whenever we talk about being a salesperson, we say what? I'm not a salesperson. I'm an engineer. I'm an attorney. I'm a chiropractor. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a loan broker. I'm a finance person. I'm everything but salespeople, right? And why? Because whenever we think of salesperson, who do we think of? The used car salesperson, right? In the lot. And so, let me just make it easy for you. What is it? Let's go back to the basic. What is the definition of a salesperson? What do you think of when you think about salesperson? How do you define a salesperson? Anyone? What comes to mind whenever we say salespeople? Pushy. Yes. Selling something you don't want, right? That's negative connotation, right? Any positive ones out there that you can think of? Knowledgeable. Yes, right? So the basic definition, were you going to say something? Educator. Great. Presenter. That's good. Now we have some positive connotation, right? The definition of a salesperson is professionally helping others, people to buy, right? We love to buy. And look at Amazon, look at all the department store. How much money are we spending each year, right? We love to buy, but we absolutely hate to be sold to, right? So a real salesperson is someone that will professionally help other people to make that purchasing decisions. And my favorite definition of selling is to educate, like what you said, to educate your potential buyer enough so they make a conscious decision to whether your product or service is going to help them, both in life or in business. How do you like that? Do you see yourself in that role? If you do, we're all salespeople. All right? So now, let me ask you this. What the purchasing decision based on? Are they mainly based on logic or mainly based on emotion? Who thinks they're mostly based on logic? Okay. All right. Who thinks they're based on emotion mainly? Who is not going to raise their hand regardless? All right. As it turned out, 20% are based on logic and 80% based on emotion. So today, the bottom line of this topic is if you cannot touch someone's emotion, if you cannot touch someone's emotion, you're not going to get the sales, right? Now, great salespeople all have a purpose, and that purpose is what? Focus, make money. Focus on your prospect, not your products. Focus on your prospects, knowing their needs, knowing their wants, knowing their desire, and knowing their fear and their pain. That's when you can elicit that emotion, and that's when you get the sales. There are two books I want to recommend to you. You might want to write this down. The first one is by Spencer Johnson called 1 Minute Sales Manager. Who has read that book? A salesperson. The second book is by Og Mandino, and that's a pretty classic book that's pretty old. And that's The Greatest Salesman in the World. Who has read that book? All right. So these two books are very easy reads. If you haven't read them, just pick them up. Spencer Johnson, 1 Minute Salesperson. The second book is Og Mandino, The Greatest Salesman in the World. Right. So the greatest salesperson in the world do have a Christian undertone to it. So if you don't mind, that's a great book. It's a very classic book on sales. All right? But both of them talk about this. You need to focus on your prospect, not your product. And then you come up on top. Okay? Now, who controls the conversation? The person asking the question or the person doing the talking? Questions, right? Joe, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
What car are you driving?
I'm driving a Toyota today.
What is the most important feature that you like in your car?
The room it has.
The room it has. See how I'm controlling where the conversation goes? By asking questions, right? So no doubt, the person asking the question is the one controlling where the conversation goes. All right? Now, as a salesperson, defined by our definition, we are problem solvers. Our best tool, our best weapons are questions, right? You ask a question, you elicit their emotion, and you let your prospect do the selling for you. Right? That's the goal for this entire question-based selling process. Now, how does this process go? It's actually pretty simple. You ask a question, they give you an answer. You keep asking questions, they keep giving you an answer, and the process go asking question and answer. At some point, your prospect would ask you a question, and that's when you know that you have reached their emotion, and the sales is for you to have. All right? So whenever you get to the point that they ask you a question, you have already dig deep enough to elicit their emotion. Cool? Now, I'm going to have to tell you this. This is the old selling process, and this is actually the selling process I trained my sales team when I was running my own company. Right? It goes like this. You build rapport. You make friends with them, right? You take them out to coffee, to lunch, to game, whatever have you, just make friends with them, right? Once you establish that rapport, now you sell. You take everything in your bag and lay it on the table, and hopefully something is going to stick with them, right? And then after that, what do? You follow up, you relentlessly follow up until they buy, or they tell you that they no longer are interested. Does this sound familiar? Is that how you were trained? This is how I was trained, and this is how I train my salespeople, right? But I'm going to tell you a different process now. And this process is basically what we call a question funnel. It starts with asking a series of open-ended questions. And the goal for these Questions are to solicit their emotion, because we say 80% of the time it's emotional decision. If you cannot get to their emotion, you cannot get the sales. So open-ended questions are to elicit their emotion, and this is actually where most people, salespeople are very weak at, right? We say the strategy is to play dumb and dig deeper. And I don't like the word play dumb because it almost feels like you're pretending, right? What it really means is don't assume anything. Don't assume you know, just ask, right? And one example is I have quite a bit of prospects who come to me and say, hey, Elisa, I need your help because I need some time management tools. I'm too busy and all that, and I just need time management help. And I have made this mistake enough times, so that's why I'm telling you now. I jumped right into it. I assume, oh, you need time management help? Great. Joe's book, that time management system, that's what we're good at. Oh yeah, of course, I have this small business calendaring system. I'm gonna get this implement with whatever you have right now. In a few months, you're gonna be up and running, right? And then later on, you'll figure out that's actually not what they wanted, right? Just ask questions, don't assume. So now, whenever they come to me and say, I have time management issue, and I say, what is it that you wanted to do more? What is it that you're not having enough time to do yet? Why is it that you can't get to where you want to be, right? Then you actually start to get deeper and you understand more about their real issues, and you also get them to touch their emotion. It's actually not about the time, it's about some other things that is holding them back, right? So ask question, play dumb, and dig deep. That's the fundamental of this. And usually open-ended questions start with, who, where, what, when, why, and how. These are the questions that you ask that they cannot say yes and no. They cannot give you a number, and they cannot just give you one word or two words to answer you, right? So think about this, and if you don't know what open-ended questions are or what open-ended questions works for you, it's time for you to write them down. What are some open-ended questions you can ask in your industry, in your business, that would solicit emotions in your potential clients, right? So open-ended question, and then second is specific question. This is actually where most salespeople are very good at, because we're good at what we do and we know our product and we know our service, right? For me, this is like, how many years have you been in business? How many employees do you have? What's your current revenue? What's your goal in a year? What's your revenue goal in a year, right? These are all the things that you know you're gonna ask your clients in order to solidify which product or service you're gonna recommend to them. So we're very good at specific questions. And with open-ended and specific question, hopefully we get to their emotion and we know the scope of the project. This is when you give them solutions. And we'll talk about that a little later. And after that, you check their temperature. It basically means, is your solution fit into what they had in mind? Are you on the same page at the end of the game, right? Make adjustment, and then eventually you ask a detailed question and you close. So that's the process for question-based selling. That's a question-based selling funnel, right? And now, when I say you ask a question and they give an answer, ask a question, it's not simply just ask one question, they give answer and move on. It's actually a question cycle. And the cycle goes like this. You ask a question, they give you an answer, you make it okay. Regardless what you hear, make it okay. And I'm gonna go through the whole process and I'll give you an example. Make it okay, then you cite a story or statistics, right? Like 80% of the people are like you today, right? Cite a statistic or tell a story. Then you give them a label, and then you take notes and you move on to the second question. So, for example, I would ask someone, how much are you spending now in your marketing? And the person said, I just spent $200,000 on Facebook ad alone last month. That's right. That's right is the most neutral way of making it okay. They are where they are. Just make it okay. That's right. most of my clients spent a lot of money on marketing, right? Give them the story, then say, I think we should do a ROI analysis on your marketing effort to see if they're giving you the return that you need, right? Give them a label, an ROI analysis. Now at this point, they are probably gonna be very interested in figuring out what that is, right? Oh, ROI analysis, what is it? How do you do them, right? Don't address them right then, right there. Say, you know what, I'm gonna take a note because I need to know more about your business and I'll give you an overall picture of what I think you need. So I'm just gonna take a note and we'll come back and we'll revisit it. So don't go into a rabbit hole at that point because you haven't understood their business yet and you haven't elicited their emotion yet. So take a note, move on to the next question. So, besides Facebook marketing, what other marketing effort are you currently using? Right? Move on to the next question and go through this cycle again. So that's how you ask questions. That's how the question process goes. Right? And when you ask a question, you need to give them some information, like I said, the labeling, right? And another thing is you need to talk in prospect's language. And when I say that, I'm talking about twofold, right? One is you need to understand their learning style. Who are familiar with the VAC learning style? A few, right? It stands for visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So there are only 3 learning styles that every one of us have, either a visual learner, auditory learner, or a kinesthetic learner. And I'm not gonna go into detail, but I'll be more than happy to go offline with you because DISC and VAC are combined with question-based selling is a very powerful tool. However, they're a little bit more sophisticated. Actually, this and VAC is one of the workshops that we do. So I'll be more than happy to go offline with you. But in any sense, on the high level, VAC, what does it mean? If they're a visual learner, use visual words, right? Do you see that? Can you picture this? Because they form image in their head. Auditory learner, how does that sound to you? You know, the sound, right? And the kinesthetic people, how does that feel to how do you feel about it, right? It's a feeling. So use the word that use the language that is in their modality of learning. They're gonna pick up a lot easier than other language that you use. Second fold of this is actually noticing. This is when your active listening comes in. Notice certain phrase or certain words that means differently to them, or they use under a certain context, right? So I have a client, a potential client once come in, and whenever he wanted to tell me something important, he say, hey, listen, listen, listen. If I don't get this contract, I'm doomed, right? If I don't this, I'm whatever. Whenever he wanted to tell me anything important, he would say, listen, listen, listen. Pick that up, and in my answer to him, I actually say, hey, listen, listen, listen. For this whole plan to work, the very critical step 1 is here. If you don't get this implemented, forget about the rest of the plan, right? So I reflect what he told me. I know that in that context means it's important. I reflect it back to him so he can pick it up, right? So talk in your prospect's language, all right? And now, another important thing you need to bear in mind is what's in it for me. All your prospect, whenever they're talking to you, that's what in their head. What's in it for me, right? Think about it as the initial WIIFM, as in a radio station, right? WIIFM. Before you go into any sales call, tune yourself to that channel, WIIFM. And remember, it's all about your clients. It's all about their needs, their wants, their desire, and their struggle, their pain, right? It's not about you, it's not about your product. So tune into that, and better yet, just to get you used to it, here's a tip, right? Whenever, the next time you go into your potential client and start talking to them, just imagine your clients have WIIFM tattooed in their foreheads, in that color, right? That will give you a big smile, and that will also remind you that it's about them. So it's all about what your clients want, not about your product, right? Okay, so after you reach the emotion and you find out what they need by the specific questions and the open-ended question, now it's time to offer solutions. And when we say offer a solution, it really depends on their DISC profile. Who is familiar with DISC profile? Personality profile? Not a lot, right? It basically, in a high level, most people fall into one or two categories in a personality or behavioral profile, and they call the DISC, which stand for dominance, inspiration, steadiness, and consistency or conscientiousness, however you want to define it. Basically, there are different personality of a person. You can actually listen to their conversation and sort of get an idea of who they are. Are they more dominant? Are they more party-goer, inspirational? Are they more like laid back and reserved, but steady and don't like changes? Or are they more analytical? Right? It's all about numbers. It's all about being perfect. Right? So their personality profile depends. Based on their personality profile, you offer your solution differently. I'm just going to give you an example, and as I said, DISC is a pretty big topic. I'll be more than happy to go offline with you on that. But let's say they're a dominant person. They're a high D personality. These type of people, they want to make decisions. They want to be in control. They want it quick. They're impatient, right? With them, you say, hey, based on what you told me, John, either X solution or Y solution will suit you the best. I'll give you a real brief summary on each one of them, and you can make a decision which one you think you want to go with. Right? So you give them the choice, make it brief, and you move on. Right? So give them a solution. And then after you give them a solution, it's time to check temperature. Basically see and give them a detailed question. Basically, this is at a point you want to see if your offer agree with what they have in mind. Are you missing something? Right? So a temperature question is pretty simple. What does that fit into what you have in mind, right? Or I always like to say, what do you think about it? How do you like it, right? And you just check to see if they say, oh yeah, that's exactly what I have in mind. Or say, oh, actually I'm looking for a little bit over here. Do you have solution for that? This is for you to adjust your offer, right? After the solution and they say this is good, you assume the sale. And it's yours to lose. You assume the sales because they, I'm sorry? Good? Question? No? All right. So now, detailed question, this is where you already assume the sales, and it's yours to lose, right? And detailed question you ask is this. Based on what you told me, John, we would better get started now, shouldn't we? Right? And my usual question is, when do you want to get started? Right? And my partner Joe there, his best question with this is, when do you want to start improving your business? Right? So whatever fits you, you have to have a detailed question prepared, one or two detailed questions prepared to ask that, because that's when you can move to close. All right? Now, when you ask that question, you need to be able to handle objections, right? Handling objection is pretty big a topic. I'm only going to give you an overall framework of how to go about handling objection. The most important thing is, if you don't reach an agreement, you want to lay all objections on the table at once before you move on to handling them. Or else you ask them, hey, when do you want to start? Well, I don't have the time for it. You deal with that objection, then they say, oh, actually, I still can't move on because of something, right? So you want to put all objections up in front and then deal with them at the same time. And what do you do that? You say, okay, if they say time is what I have a problem with, right? I don't have time. You say, okay, great, but if time is not an issue, are you ready to move forward today? Right? They're going to have to tell you yes or no. And one thing is they're actually going to dig deeper. Maybe they will tell you why exactly they have the objection with, right? Maybe they say, well, it's too expensive, I can't afford it. Okay, great. Besides time and money, is there anything else, right? And if they say, oh, I still have to get my spouse approval. Besides time, money, and spouse approval, is there anything else that would prevent you from making a decision today? You want to ask all that until they say, no, there's no other, if all these pan out, then I will be able to make a decision and move forward today. So then that's great. Let's spend some time, let's invest some time to look at solutions here to see if we can get to an agreement, right? That's the framework where you want to handle objection. And once you get to agreement, it's time for you to move on and close. And basically it says, hey, great, let me explain how it is for you to sign on to my service, right? But my favorite is just this. Let's get the paperwork out of the way today, and let's get your credit card on file, and let's schedule our first session together, right? So that is my comfortable close, or not my comfortable way of moving into the logistics. What is yours? If you don't have one, you need to think about one to use. All right, and it's all about training, practice. Practice it until you feel comfortable about it so that you're not trying to act like you're scripting. Good? So with that, I think it's time to move into action, and I'm turning it back to my partner, Joe.
Okay, now let's get into action.